Hey, good afternoon. Gabe DeArmond here. Welcome in to the 573 report. Real quick, feel free to say in the comments if you cannot see me. Our pre-show meeting consisted of Mitchell Forde not being able to see me and me being able to see myself. So whether you can see me or not doesn't really matter as long as you can hear me. And some of you may not want to hear me. But regardless, this is the 573 report, our weekly up until the end of March show here, talking about Mizzou sports. After this, we're going to go on kind of a need to do a show basis as things happen. It will be the off season. But for now, one more talking about Dennis Gates, the first week of his career here at Missouri, recruiting, spring football, whatever you guys want to talk about. Feel free to ask questions, put comments in, and let us know what you guys want to talk about. We'll bring Mitch in a minute, but want to remind you that 573 Tees is the sponsor of this every single week. You can go to 573tees.com. You can go to their physical location in Alley A between 9th and 10th Streets in downtown Columbia, Missouri. That is just a half block off of Broadway. So I want you to check them out either in person or online. If you're a Cardinals fan, I know they just did a release. I had heard that if this is your thing, the Cardinals signed some old guy that used to be a really good player for them. So you can go get your Ken Oberkfell gear at 573tees.com. I believe that was his name. Anything else, Mizzou stuff, Dennis Gates stuff, Eli Drinkwitz stuff, whatever else you want, go to 573tees.com. Hit the like button here, subscribe to the channel, do all the things that people who know more about YouTube ask you to do every single week. We bring Mitchell Forde on the screen, and by the way, Mitch, they can see me, so it's only you that don't get to see me right now. I feel like this week was the calm after the storm and kind of before the other storm. Like a lot of talk about what could happen, but really nothing has happened.
Yeah. I think maybe part of that has to do with Mizzou being on spring break. No one's really around Columbia right now. But yeah, it's still kind of expected to have some assistant news pretty soon, some more recruiting news, considering Mizzou got 2 commitments in Gates' first 4 days on the job. Granted, didn't exactly think that pace was going to keep up, but you never know. So yeah, it slowed down a little bit. We've got the Final Four this weekend, which is kind of a de facto coaches convention. I think we'll maybe have a little bit more after that, but it's been kind of nice. Not too much going on this week.
Yeah, I had somebody tweet at me that it seemed like it was about time for Gates to get another commitment. I'm like, well, it's been 3 days, so yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, the Final Four, I always, whenever I picture this, because everybody kind of calls it the coaches convention, and they do actually have a coaches convention there, but I always picture it like the job fair that Dunder Mifflin went to, and everybody has a booth set up, and hopefully Dennis Gates takes more than just one blank sheet of paper to this particular job fair. But that's what I always picture. It's just all these booths set up, and people are like, hey, if you think you want to coach here, stop by this booth and we'll have a chat about it.
I picture it more like there's the little coaches convention thing where they mill about and someone talks about the state of the game or whatever, and then they all go to whatever really expensive places nearby and they eat steaks and drink alcohol and charge it to their schools.
Right. It's the coaches version of St. Elmo's.
Right. Yeah. Usually it's half the time it's in Indian at St. Elmo's. This year I forget where it is. New Orleans. Well, they can have their pick. There's many places where they can eat good food and drink expensive alcohol and charge it to their schools.
Yeah, plenty of hurricanes and beignets at Cafe Du Monde this week on coaches. So, but we're kind of waiting for. I mean, the staff last Wednesday was Dennis Gates, and the staff this Wednesday is, so far as we know, Dennis Gates. And we don't really expect that to change the next couple of days. Sorry, but we expect to get through the Final Four probably, and I would think by the end of next week we have minimum 1 or 2 announcements, but I think maybe the whole staff.
Yeah, I think that's possible. I have no idea how these things actually really typically go. I've never actually covered the whole basketball coaching staff transition thing. I think though that he's probably got a pretty good idea right now, waiting on a few things to wrap up the coaches convention this weekend, Cleveland State to hire a new coach, et cetera, and then probably once those dominoes fall, it'll be pretty quick that he'll have all three full-time assistants in place.
Yeah, and he talked at the beginning. It almost kind of sounded like maybe there were some de facto agreements in place. And it was interesting because I started thinking earlier today, I think I even texted you, I'm trying to find out if it's weird or trying to figure out if I think it's weird that there's not a staff here yet. And, I was texting and Dave Matter pointed out to me that Cornell Mann and Chris Hollander were not hired until 17 days after Conzo Martin was announced as Missouri's coach. So that's really kind of standard unless you have a situation where they did like when they hired Michael Porter Sr., which was like, what do we announce first, the dad or the older brother or the younger brother? How should we handle all that?
Yeah, so for sure. I don't think it's probably as weird as a lot of people think. And Dennis Gates does have some help on the recruiting trail, as we've posted on our message board. There's a couple guys who have been helping out in that capacity who are maybe going to join the staff in some off-court assistant type roles. So it's not just him handling all the calling 97 transfers a day deal and trying to set up all these recruiting visits. So yeah, I don't think it's probably as weird as some fans think. I think we get accustomed to having, going through a coaching search and having news every day, and then all of a sudden, getting commits every day, and it's like, what, a quiet week, something must be wrong.
Right. I like to think that it is just him. He basically has 27 different Zoom meetings set up throughout the day, and he just has to get on one and go, I'm sorry, who are you again? I just did one of these.
Really, it would make sense to just go ahead and record himself.
Right. He could just play it back here. He should have his own YouTube channel and just do his recruiting meetings on there. I feel like it'd be better that way. We would know.
Well, we would know who he's talking to, which would be excellent.
We would know far more about it because the one thing you can be assured of is that the transfers are not going to do interviews or respond to messages, really. So, but I don't know. We've got a list. I think I just put two more names on there today. Jason Roach from the Citadel, and had somebody tell me that they have at least expressed some interest in Adam Miller from LSU via Illinois. And I think we've got 18 names on that list. The scholarship limit is 13. They already have 2 commitments, so I don't think that they're going to get all 18 of these transfers to come to Missouri. But so over/under on total new players. They've already got 2, obviously. And I'm not counting Christian Jones and Aiden Shaw because they were already scheduled to be here. But over/under on more new players, 4.5. Where would you go?
Oh man, I need to brush up on my scholarship chart here. I'm gonna pull it up because I forget how many people are actually left on the roster. But I think that I would say under. I think that I think 4 sounds about right, 3 or 4. But again, I'm gonna pull my scholarship situation up and make sure I'm not being way off here. Okay, so right now we've got Kobe Brown, Amari Davis, DeJuan Gordon, Boogie Coleman, Ronnie DeGray, Yaya Keita, and Caleb Brown. That's 7 plus the 2 newcomers. And then and Christian Jones. So that gets us to 10. Yeah, I'm sticking with my 4. I think there will be 1 more defection and 4 more newcomers brought in. That's my answer.
Yeah, I'd probably go under unless there's a transfer out. Like if one of the guys like Boogie Coleman or Amari Davis who came in last year decides to transfer again, that could always change things, I guess. But that's about where I would fall. Look, clearly they need a point guard, probably 2. I think they could use another tall player, especially if Yaya Keita. Hey, breaking news. DeJuan Gordon has just entered the transfer portal.
Wow. There we go. I might have to adjust my answer.
Yeah. I feel like we Okay, I got to retweet that real quick. It's from Jamie Shaw of On3. I don't know. Talk about DeJuan Gordon for a minute while I make sure somebody has posted this on our message board, which I'm sure somebody already has.
Yeah, I will. So basically, I'm a little bit surprised by this, I'll be honest. Of all the guys on the roster, I actually thought he was maybe one of the least likely to transfer, just because you have the combination of, one, he's from Chicago, and I know that his AAU coach and high school coach is tight with Dennis Gates. I talked to him on the phone, I guess about a week ago, maybe a little more now. I figured that I wouldn't think this is a situation where Dennis Gates is running him off, just because, I wouldn't think he's going to set out to make enemies in Chicago when Gordon wouldn't be one of the first people I would run off if I was running people off. I thought Gordon was asked to probably do too much last season. He certainly did not have the ball handling prowess that you would like, but he did things well. I mean, he's a 3-and-D player. He's a guy who can shoot, he can spot up and shoot threes, and he can play good defense, and there's room for that. And he's a pretty good athlete, which I think Dennis Gates wants. So I would guess that this is a decision more on the DeJuan Gordon end of things. He will have to get a waiver to transfer and not sit out right away. I'm sure he will be able to do that since Conzo Martin got fired or, mutually parted ways, whatever. But that's all I got on it.
That was plenty of time. I do have a message out to confirm it, but look, I've almost never seen such and such is in the portal, and it's not true. So I'm sure it's true.
The only thing you got to watch out for are those fake accounts now.
and there was a kid recently that entered the portal and then pulled out of the portal and then went back in. It was in football. I can't remember who it was. But
it was Hopper. Wasn't it? Or was it? Yeah.
It was Tyron Hopper. But
Tyron, yeah.
No, Gordon is, he got, I think, some blowback on our site and on social media this year. But of the guys that came in, I looked at him and thought, I think he's the best player. I mean, he had one specific. He was the best 3-point shooter they had. He shot 36% from three, got better as the year went on, and he was athletic. I looked at him and I said, he has a skill, right? He looks like kind of a Florida State type player. I mean, he's fast and can get around the court. Now, he can't dribble, and that should not be a thing that he was allowed to do. We understand that. He was not a point guard. Again, that's not really his fault. He wasn't ever supposed to be a point guard. And then he came here, and Missouri, the guys who were supposed to be point guards also weren't point guards, and so everybody just played point guard. That's not his fault that he got put in that position. But I think, like you said, if he's a spot-up guy, an athletic guy that plays defense, maybe a sixth man, for some energy off the bench, I think he could have had a role here. That one, I mean, look, there are no must-keep pieces off a 12-21 team. This is not that big a deal in the end. But, if I would have gone through and picked out the guys who I thought would leave, I'm not sure he would have been top of my list.
Yeah, I think he might have been, near bottom of my list just because you look at there's some guys who you think that guy maybe is asked to leave, and then some guys where you say he probably has better options. And I would be surprised if DeJuan Gordon falls into either of those camps, honestly. But yeah, definitely not pressing the panic button or anything like that. I mean, there was always going to be guys who leave. I mean, there's guys who leave every roster every year. We're talking about, more than 1,000 names in the portal last season. I'm sure we'll get there again this year, especially when you introduce a coaching change into the mix. It's going to happen.
So we've got Anton Brookshire and Sean Gordon were mid-season. Pickett and Brazil, Wilmore, Gordon. I mean, that's half the team already in the transfer portal. And again, hey, 12 and it's kind of like I always say when people look at football season and go, well, they bring back 19 starters. Well, cool. They were 3-9 last year. Maybe that's not what you want to do. Maybe you need some turnover, and with a new coach, hey, that's fine. Gordon probably won't be the last one. We'll see where it goes, but that opens up another spot, and let's start running through. We've got a few basketball questions, so we'll hit those to start, and then just talk about some scenarios. The Magic Man says, would you be interested in Andre Curbelo from Illinois or Sharif O'Neal from LSU? I saw a tweet about Curbelo earlier today. It listed like 8 teams, I think, that he was looking at. Missouri was not one of them. He's a guy that I'd be willing to take a look at because there's potential there. He wasn't very good at Illinois this year. I don't know. You correct me if I'm wrong on this. If Sharif O'Neal was not named Sharif O'Neal, I don't think anybody's really all that interested.
Yeah, no, I totally agree on O'Neal. I think that he's only getting the attention he's gotten because his dad is Shaq. And certainly, he's tall and long, and, in a sense, you can't teach that. But yeah, I think that he's probably someone who's destined to step down a level. For Curbelo, it's interesting. He's probably one of the more polarizing players in the portal. He's obviously very talented and has shown that at times in the past. He's had some really good games. He's had some really bad games. He's had some games where, he'll turn it over in bunches, and he, for whatever reason, has, had some times where he hasn't been on the floor even when healthy. I know he had the injury issue this past season. And I, obviously have been nowhere around the Illinois team. I'm not going to pretend to really know the real story as to what's gone on there, like in the second half of their NCAA tournament loss. But he kind of reminds me a lot, honestly, of Xavier Pinson, where, he's clearly a high ceiling guy, very athletic, can do a lot of things, but he can also be the reason you lose a game, and you've got some question marks, I would say, about his ability to kind of fit into his role and into the team.
Yeah, and now I would like to say that Sharif coming here would have made a lot more sense if they'd hired Shaq, like I said.
Which I'm upset that they didn't do that.
Maybe, hey, 3 assistant spots. Maybe you hire Shaq to get Sharif.
I feel like Shaq would need their entire assistant pool of $900K and then still would probably say no.
I feel like Shaq made that amount last night somehow.
Yeah.
AU Stock says, if Pinson comes back, is he considered a new player or a returning player? So, all right, so let's just talk about this. I'll be honest. I'm not sure what the level of interest here is. Now, I know you had somebody tell you think that Dennis Gates was doing a Zoom with Pinson. He posted a lot of things on Instagram that might have just been yesterday, maybe 2 days ago, I don't know, that indicated like, hey, I'm thinking about coming back to Missouri. And I'm trying to find the nicest way to say this. The Xavier Pinson, Daniel Parker Jr. Social media experience is kind of on another, like, maybe he's really talking to Dennis Gates and maybe he's thinking about coming back, and also maybe he just thinks that's fun to do on Instagram. I really don't know which one's more likely.
Right. Yeah. No,
Does it sound like there's crashing?
Are you still going? I feel like you kind of broke up on my end. I can't hear you.
Okay, well, I'm here. Can you still not
hear
me?
I'll respond about Pinson. Yeah, so I mean, I think that Mizzou fans don't need to think very far back to remember some of the same stuff when he was on Mizzou's roster. I think it was at one point, prior to the 2020-21 season where he posted something along the lines of like, where should I play next season or something like that. And so clearly there's a little bit of an element of liking to stir the pot on social media there. That could be more of this. I did get a message, as you mentioned, that he was supposed to talk to Gates on Monday. I don't know if what that looked like, Zoom, whatever. I have no idea if it happened. I can't say 100% for sure if that information was right. I think it was, but I don't know for sure. So I think that my feeling all along has been that it just doesn't make a ton of sense to me, and I would be surprised if, he was super high on the priority list for Dennis Gates. But, crazier things have happened in the transfer portal in college basketball, that's for sure.
I just think there are guys out there who are at least as good of players and probably better players who, A, didn't bail on this school 1 year ago, who, B, didn't get benched in the second half of an NCAA tournament game, and C, who have shown more of an ability to accept a role. I mean, in LSU's SEC tournament game, he got benched basically for playing no defense and had to be consoled by an assistant coach on the bench. And look, I never had any issue with X. I mean, he was always fine to us, and he talked to us when they asked him to talk and all that. And yes, this team this year could have used him because they didn't have a guy who could go get 30 on his own, and he could do that. So if Dennis Gates wants to do it, fine. But if you're in Gates' shoes, isn't the first call you make to Conzo Martin and just say, hey, man, you coached this guy here. What's the deal? I mean, don't you look into that?
Yeah, I would think so. And one other thing that you didn't mention, I'm not sure that Pinson's for sure going to be eligible to play next season. Now, there's a good chance he could get a waiver for, Will Wade being fired. And I guess there's a chance he could graduate as well. But keep in mind, this is his second transfer. It is not a guarantee that he's going to be able to play next season.
Yeah. So I mean, look, it's fine if you're looking into it. There would be other point guards on my list, higher on my list, but nobody asked me. I've not heard from Dennis Gates since the introductory press conference. He has not asked me who he should recruit. So if he recruits Xavier Pinson, we will cover Xavier Pinson along with whoever else he does recruit. I don't really know where else I was going. I felt like I had something else to say, but I don't.
Yeah, I will say I'll add one other thing on the portal recruiting, and I think people forget this, and so I just want to get out ahead of it a little bit. There's you'll see from our transfer tracker that you kind of have to recruit by volume in the portal, because 97 teams reach out to every single player who enters. It's competitive, and so there's going to be 90% of the guys Mizzou is tied to, they don't end up landing, and so there's really I would say there's no need to panic when if of the guys, what would you say? I think we have 18 guys on our transfer tracker right now. I mean, maybe they get one or two of those, and maybe they're still gonna add enough transfers to get to 13 scholarship players, or at least 12 scholarship players. There's still gonna be a lot more guys enter the portal. I would say there's no reason to press the panic button when some of these other guys inevitably end up, going off the board.
Right, because reached out to, it means, I mean, it could be as simple as sent a text and said, "Hey, you up?" I mean,
and no one is vetting these lists. Like, a guy tells a reporter, "Hey, I heard from these 9 schools," and he tweets it out. There's no one who's confirming that is perfectly accurate.
Right, and there's certainly no way to do it. So, yeah, we'll see where it goes. So, I don't know, man. This portal stuff, it's kind of like NIL to me. I support it. I think they should be able to transfer one time, but this is out of control. I think there should be a rule. You only get to go in the portal once, or I don't think you should be able to play for 3 colleges, right? I mean, that's just I don't know. We've got guys that are looking at their 3rd and 4th schools in 4 years, and I get it. Coaches leave, and you want to correct mistakes, but there's got to be some sort of, you can have freedom, but let's control this a little bit. Right now, you have 350 teams with 13 guys on them each, approximately. I mean, that's close to 4,000 free agents. It's like if everybody in a pro sport was on a 1-year contract. That's what you have in college sports right now.
Yep, no, totally agree. I think it definitely needs to be reined in a little bit. I think the one-time transfer waiver was the right decision, in part because the NCAA waivers were so arbitrary and it took them so long to figure out who was going to get one. So I say just totally stop doing the NCAA waiver process for second transfers. Just have everyone can transfer one time. Everyone can enter the portal one time. And if for some reason you have to leave your school after that, you're sitting out a year. And that's it. It's just so much simpler. It eliminates a lot of the guesswork on, is this guy going to be eligible? And it should hopefully decrease the number of the amount of change we see every year.
Right. I want to treat it kind of like a coach's challenge for instant replay, right? Okay, you get one free, total, do whatever you want. And then the next one, that's going to cost, there's a limit to it. You don't just get unlimited do-overs. And I think that is giving kids, because look, anybody can make one bad decision, but if you make 2 bad decisions in 4 years, I mean, at some point you got to live with the consequences of a bad decision.
Right. And it should also be noted, people talk about, oh, this kid's their coach got fired, they have to be able to move on. Is the worst thing in the world really to have to stay on scholarship at a place, or if you really want to transfer again because maybe you are in a bad situation, to sit out a year but still be on scholarship as an athlete? Like, if the point theoretically, I know this isn't actually the point, is to get an education, like you're still got a year taking classes. I don't think it is that unjust.
Yeah, and here's the counterpoint, and it's a good point. Danny Ragland says every coach is trying to recruit better players every year. No reason that the players shouldn't take a better job if their coach is actively trying to replace them. And I agree, and I see that. But part of this is some of these guys aren't taking better jobs. They're just taking different jobs, or in some cases worse jobs to be. But what Danny points out is why there is really no answer, because there are coaches, and we don't know, again, if DeJuan Gordon was in this situation or not. But let's just say, for sake of argument, he was. Dennis Gates came in and said, hey, man, I know you've already transferred once, but frankly, I've watched the tape and you don't fit what I do here. Well, then, yeah, he should be able to. So there is no right answer, but there has to be something better than what we're doing now. And my main problem with it is the same thing as my main problem was with the COVID stuff. The people getting screwed are high school players. I mean, there are entire programs not even recruiting high school kids at this point. So what's happening now is the mid-major programs are, farm systems for the high major guys. So the high major guys they're taking the elite top 100 players, and then they're going to the transfer portal for the next wave. So those 3 stars that used to be going there are now going to mid-majors, hoping to go to high majors in 2 years. And the kids who are going to mid-majors are now going to low majors, and eventually a bunch of kids that had a chance to play D1 basketball now don't have that chance.
So a couple things. I agree with the first point about coaches running players off and how that is the ultimate counter argument, and that makes this whole thing hard. And I agree with that. I don't want to overlook that. Secondly, my thing right now is eventually we should get to a point where there's still the same number of spots in college basketball. There's still X number of teams with X number of scholarships, which shouldn't mean there are fewer high school players recruited. Now, maybe you have a few more teams taking guys from like JUCO or Division II ranks or something like that, but I don't think it's that big. The thing that's made it where high school players have been really hurt is the extra year of eligibility, because you have a whole extra class of players with college experience who can transfer, and they're able to do it now suddenly for free. And then now you have a 25% less, not actually, but roughly, spots available for high school kids. Eventually it should get to a point, I feel like, where, yeah, like you mentioned, a lot of these high major places, they're going to take, say, 2 transfers and 2 like higher level high school recruits, and it would normally be like 4 high school recruits a year. But then that should mean there's more spots available at mid majors that need to replenish their roster, or there is more of a market for a kid who's hey, look, we normally maybe wouldn't have recruited you, but we need guys who are going to stick around. So will you come here in redshirt, and then we'll get you into the fold, because there's a lot of guys who, if you recruit like a fringe top 150 guy, like a Mario McKinney or Trey Jackson, where he's thinking he's going to come in and play right away as a freshman. Maybe that's not realistic. He transfers. You just wasted that recruiting spot, that spot on the roster. So ultimately, I feel like we're going to get closer to a balance. There's probably still, I think, needs to be some changes to the system. But it is an unprecedented time.
Well, and I still think, and I said this last year, and I thought it would settle down some this year, and it hasn't. Maybe next year. But I just think a lot of these kids are entering the transfer portal for fear of missing out. It's like, well, that guy's entering the transfer portal, and they fall in love with being recruited. And they like seeing their name on Twitter that, hey, these schools have reached out, and they like getting the messages from the fan base and all that say, hey, please come to school X. And I think, when you're recruited in high school, fully get it, man. That'd be cool to have all these people wanting you and these coaches treating you like kings and all that. But then once you are a college basketball player, that shouldn't be what it's about. It should be about finding the best place, A, to play basketball, and B, to be a college student. And I just think that, I think 2 things, and we'll kind of wrap up with this. Number one, I think that as a coach, you can't build a program like this by doing this every single year. And I understand why Dennis Gates is going to hit the portal super hard this year. But like 2 years from now, it needs to be 3 high school kids and 1 or 2 transfers, not the reverse, because the backbone of a place like Missouri is still going to have to be high school kids you can get to stay for 3 or 4 years.
I agree. I would just add that's hard to do because you get to a point where, you say, okay, I'm comfortable taking this many high school kids, and that's going to get us to, roughly, 13, 14 scholarships, whatever, because we'll bank on someone leaving every year. Then you get to this time of year, and all of a sudden 5, 6 guys enter the portal, and that's almost become the norm where we're seeing 4+ guys enter the portal off of every roster. You have to fill those spots from transfers, and I agree. I think the ideal formula is you're not replacing half your roster every single year. I just think that's a hard way, especially when you're Missouri and you're not getting your pick of high school recruits or transfer recruits. That's a hard way to do it. It's become a really valuable skill and a difficult skill to keep your roster together.
And the other thing is, and look, if the answer to this is shut up, you're an old man, cool, I get it. But I understand it's been a minute since Missouri fans felt connected to basketball and really liked it. But back when Missouri was good, it wasn't just that they were winning games. I mean, obviously that helped, but that 2012 team that won 31 games, I think they were even more beloved than they would have been just for winning 31 games because, like, Marcus Denman had been here 4 years, and Kim English had been here 4 years, and Lawrence Bowers on the bench had been here 4 years, and they'd fought through a coaching change. And I just think there's a connection with the fan. I mean, look at Kansas. Like, it can be done. Christian Brown has been there 3 years. Ochai Agbaji has been there 4 years, So you can do it, and I just think if I'm a fan of one of these teams, I'm going to get tired of showing up every November and going, who are these guys? Like, I don't know who they are. I've never seen any of them play.
You forgot to mention Mitch Lightfoot, who's been at Kansas for 15 years. But I agree. And I think that it's not just a Missouri problem. It's much more a sport problem. And it's something that, it's a tough balance. Like, coaches, their first responsibility is to win. And if they're bringing back guys who don't win games, then ultimately it doesn't matter, right? Like, fans aren't going to, if Dennis Gates had brought back the exact same roster from last season, fans weren't going to be like, oh, cool, now we get to develop a connection with these guys. They were going to be like, what the heck? These guys just won 12 games. So it's a balance, and there are teams like Arkansas who have pretty much turned over their roster and really embraced the portal every year, who fans are really connected to and they like because they win. But yes, there's something to be said for being able to follow the career of a guy and not have to learn a new roster every year. And we see fans talk about that a lot on the message board. And I agree that in an ideal world, that's part of the formula. But I don't know. Going forward, I don't know how realistic that is. And especially right now, obviously, the situation Missouri's in, I would expect quite a bit of turnover over the next couple off seasons.
No question. So, like I said, this is kind of our last, we've been doing this pretty much every Wednesday with a couple exceptions since the start of football season. And so we're entering off-season mode. The truth is we just often aren't going to have enough to talk about to do it every Wednesday. So we'll do shows kind of as warranted and as things happen. So if we're sitting here betting, our next show is going to be necessitated by what happening?
Well, does the hire of an assistant coaching staff count? Because if so, we'll probably be back within a week. Or at least by the end of next week. So I don't know what the threshold of news that demands the 573 report is.
We let the people decide, honestly.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, I mean, if he gets a full staff in here, I think that's worth talking about. If JT Daniels suddenly commits, or one of the 807 other transfer quarterbacks who may be out there, I think that's certainly worth it. Maybe like a softball series against South Carolina, maybe that's not worth the whole show.
Probably not. You could handle that one if you wanted to. I'd probably set that out.
I feel like I'd get a little pushback if I asked you to do that one on Sunday night. So
I think that there's a good chance that by the end of next week we've got a basketball staff in place.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe a few more transfers in, a few more transfers out. But appreciate all you guys who have hung out with us here today and really all year long doing this. And we aren't going away forever. We're just going away for a little while. So, Mitch, appreciate it, man. We'll catch up.
Thanks.
All right, so those of you who are still here, which no longer includes Mitchell Forde, ask you to do a couple things for us before you leave. Hit the like button on the show, or I did see one person hit the dislike button. So if you want to do that, honestly, it doesn't matter. Interaction's all the same. If you hit the dislike button, people still find out about us. So that's cool. Just hit a button that says you either like what we did or hated what we did. It's all the same to us. Share what we're doing on social media, subscribe to the channel, and that way, now that we're not regularly scheduled every week, you will get an alert if we do go live, if something happens. So do that. And more importantly, support our sponsors for this particular show. That is 573 Tees. You can check them out at 573tees.com. Like I said, I know they have a new Albert Pujols shirt out. I believe they'll probably have some Dennis Gates Mizzou basketball related stuff out here in the next few weeks if they don't already. So make sure to check out everything they offer. They also have Power Mizzou shirts and visors and stuff if you want to pick up one of those and tell everybody that you support a fledgling internet site that talks about Mizzou sports. We certainly would appreciate that. You can also go to their physical location in downtown Columbia between 9th and 10th Streets on Alley A, and tell the guys there, either online or in person, hey, you heard about it on Power Mizzou. That's why you're there. That helps us. It helps them, and you guys get new stuff, so we appreciate that. So once again, thanks for hanging out with us. We'll be back when we're back. We'll try to give you a warning, tweet, post on the message board when we're going to do a show, but we don't really know when that's going to be. So we'll talk to you guys then.